This is Mystery.
And we're on the Isle of Wight.
And on today's show, find out...
What Irish mystery did this man find on his land that changed his life forever?
And what could Mrs. Collins have seen in Loch Moa that was so terrifying she fled in fear? Hello, this is Shiarra.
And that's Steve.
And we're on the Isle of Wight to investigate a mystery of monstrous proportions.
Don't give it all away.
No, I'm just saying that we're here to take a look at one of the world's oldest mysteries.
Well, I think you better just tell them all the rest now, Steve.
Well, all I'll say is that we're going to try and find out what happened to the island's most famous residents, but more of that later. What I want to know is right now, Shiarra, does Ireland have any famous mysteries?
Does Ireland have any famous mysteries? You're having a laugh, aren't you?
Come on then, like what?
Well, if you lived in Ireland, what would you expect to find at the bottom of your garden?
I don't know. What would I expect to find at the bottom of my garden?
Watch this and find out. Rory O'Shea lived in a farm in Northern Ireland. He had suffered a terrible run of bad luck, lost his job and everything that he owned. He'd had a fantastic job as a businessman in the city and had also just inherited a huge farm with a whole herd of cows. But all that was about to change. Rory was making improvements to his newly acquired farmland when he realised there was a large tree right in the middle of one of his fields that would have to be cut down. He was warned by his farmhand that no one should touch it.
With respect, sir, if I were you, I wouldn't touch that tree.
I want that tree cut down, please.
But no one would cut it down, and eventually Rory decided to do it himself. Early the next day, Rory was woken up by his farmhand bursting into his bedroom.
Sir! Sir! I'm sorry to wake you, but it's the cows.
What is it?
They're dead.
They can't be. All of them?
All of them. And there's no sign of illness or of a wild animal attack.
But this wasn't to be the only disaster on the farm that day.
What on earth is the matter with it? It was only service last week. What's wrong? I can't get the tractor started, sir.
We'll try it again.
It's no good, sir.
Some of these things must work.
I'm telling you now, sir, they won't start.
What's wrong with them?
I know what's wrong. Your bad luck won't end here.
And sure enough, it didn't. Rory had been so preoccupied with the problems on the farm that morning that he was very late for his job in the city, and his office called with some bad news.
I'm sorry? You can't sack me. I'm not that late. Hang on. I've lost my job, my cows, and my tractors. What have I done to deserve this?
Come with me, sir. There's something you haven't seen yet.
So, Steve, have you got any ideas yet?
Did he have an arch enemy in the village who was camping at the bottom of his field and plotting his downfall?
Good idea, but there were no signs of foul play when the cows were examined or when the tractors went to the garage.
Then it sounds like UFO interference to me. Did he have any corn circles in his field?
Not a corn circle in sight. Probably because he grew potatoes instead.
Well, come on then, what was it?
All will become clear. Take a look at this. Because Rory had only recently inherited the farm, he'd not investigated all of his land and had failed to realise that there was an enchanted glen on the edge of his property.
This is a fairy ring, sir. If there's a chance of finding a fairy or leprechaun, you'll find it here.
My word. A fairy ring? I had no idea.
At the centre of the fairy ring were ancient standing stones, thought to be thousands of years old.
What is this to do with my bad luck?
This whole area, including the part of your farm where you cut down the tree, is fairyland. And the tree that you felled belonged to the fairies and leprechauns. And they don't take kindly to that. They will plague you until they feel you've paid your dues.
You must be joking, right? Fairies and leprechauns?
Let me tell you, fairies and leprechauns are taken very seriously by the Irish people. I've just shown you what can happen if you make them angry.
Well, I don't believe in them.
Steve, have I ever told you that each leprechaun has his own pot of gold? And if you catch the leprechaun, then you get to keep the gold.
Did you say leprechauns?
Uh-huh.
Pots of gold. Well, obviously it's not up to me, is it, to decide whether fairies and leprechauns exist. In fact, it could be said I'm one of the firm believers in the old little people. Where did you say the farm was?
Steve, you're so predictable.
Hello, my name's Christina and I'm from Kent. One Sunday, my aunt and I were walking my dog Jimmy along the cliff path near where I live. We weren't long into the walk when my dog Jimmy suddenly got very excited. A flock of seagulls had landed on the cliff edge and he ran off trying to chase them. Jimmy always chased seagulls, even though he could never catch them. On this particular day, something happened that I'll never forget. As Jimmy ran at the birds, they didn't move. He gathered speed, thinking that this time he might actually catch one, but they flew off at the very last second, and even though he tried to stop, he couldn't. I just remember seeing Jimmy disappear over the edge of the cliff. My aunt and I hugged each other, both knowing that it was a long drop, and that he couldn't possibly have survived. Slowly, we approached the edge of the cliff and looked over. We couldn't believe our eyes. As we looked down, we could see the waves lapping against the foot of the cliffs and expected to see Jimmy's body. Amazingly, from the top of the cliff, we could see the figure of Jimmy swimming for shore. We rushed down to the water's edge where we found him and took him straight home. We've told lots of people about this and they think it's a miracle that he survived, so we've renamed him Lucky.
Maybe Lucky not only liked to play with rubber bones, but actually has rubber bones.
No, that's totally ridiculous.
Could be true. Here, on the Isle of Wight, the sea is constantly wearing away at the cliffs and exposing dinosaur bones. This makes it a great place to find their remains, and it's here at the Dinosaur Isle Museum that they've uncovered some of the best mysteries.
The scientists are making new discoveries every day, but the greatest mystery of them all is what happened to the dinosaurs.
We know that dinosaurs roamed the marshlands of the Isle of Wight more than 120 million years ago. The ferocious Neovenator would have terrorized the giant iguanodons. The Eotyrannus, the earliest known member of the Tyrannosaur family, would have snacked on any passing Hypsilophodon that took its fancy. But then they all seem to die out very quickly.
Nobody knows why the dinosaurs became extinct, and everyone has their own ideas.
One of the most popular theories is that there was a severe weather change that the dinosaurs simply couldn't cope with. But what made the weather change so dramatically?
Some scientists believe a huge meteorite hit the Earth, raining fire from the sky and flooding whole countries. There was so much dust that the sun was completely blocked out, and the dinosaurs died.
But some of the animals did survive, like the ancient crocodiles, and their descendants are still alive today.
Steve, you don't really think any dinosaurs could still be alive, do you?
Well, everyone's heard of the Loch Ness Monster. Now, some people believe that to be a dinosaur.
I don't believe that monster exists, though.
Then how do you explain these strange events that happened in another Scottish loch, Loch Moa? Scotland is renowned for its breathtaking scenery, but it's here in Loch Moa where two local men saw something so strange they would never forget it. Giles Frederick and Arthur Brown had gone fishing for the day. They made their way to the boat laden with equipment. Little did they know that they were in for a monster catch.
So, what do you reckon you'll catch then? 10-pounder. Must be some big uns in here.
Whoever gets the smallest catch pays for dinner.
You're on.
They set off to find the perfect spot for their day's fishing. The deep loch was quiet and peaceful, with no obvious signs of life, just the beautiful crystal clear waters that stretched for 11 miles. They'd been fishing for about an hour when all of a sudden their peace was shattered.
Giles, quickly, there's something in the water over there.
What is it?
It's massive.
It looks like some kind of monster.
Whatever it was, it seemed to take only seconds to be right by the side of them. Suddenly, the boat rocked violently in the water, as if it had been hit with great force.
It hit us. What was it? Do you think it'll come back?
I don't know, but I don't plan on staying here to find out.
It must have been 8 meters long at least.
Come on, let's get out of here.
The two terrified men made their way back inland. After they'd fled, there was no sign that anything strange had ever occurred. Scary or what? What could have been in the loch that was so big?
Well, couldn't it have been like a diver that hit the boat, or maybe a submarine?
Well, I don't think a diver could be 8 meters in length, and I checked, there were no submarines in the water that day.
But why hasn't anyone else seen it then?
Ah, but they have. Mrs. Collins went to Loch Moa for a nice quiet day out. Or so she thought. Mrs. Collins was sitting next to the loch when something caught her attention in the water about 20 feet away. Whatever it was, it seemed to be coming straight for her.
Oh my goodness!
Stumbling to her feet, she ran up the bank in fear. Mrs. Collins was frightened and confused. She'd phoned her husband, who arrived soon afterwards to find his wife in distress.
Pamela, whatever happened? You look terrible. I saw something. It was terrifying. I just had to get away from there.
Don't worry. It's okay now. Where's your bag?
Oh, I must have left it behind when I ran away.
All right, you stay here. I'll go and find it.
Mr. Collins went to retrieve the bag from the bank of Loch Moa, but he was amazed at what he saw.
Oh my goodness.
Something had destroyed Mrs. Collins' property, and a slimy trail led back into the water.
What was it that they saw?
Well, there's three possible explanations. Firstly, it might have been a massive log floating in the water. Could have looked like a monster from a distance.
I don't think it could have been a log. It hit the boat too hard.
Okay, well, secondly, maybe it was a huge fish.
I don't think it could have been a huge fish either. It was over 8 meters long.
Well, the third and final explanation is that it's a prehistoric creature, maybe a bit like this. So perhaps all the dinosaurs didn't die out after all.
But I guess we'll never know. And that just about wraps it up from the Isle of Wight. Some mysteries we've solved, and some remain a mystery.
Do you know, I've really enjoyed today's ones, and I've got one more mystery for you before we go. What do you call a dinosaur with one eye?
Steve, that doesn't sound like a mystery to me, but what do you call a dinosaur with one eye?
Do you think he saw us? Get it? Do you think he saw us?
And just like the dinosaurs, Steve's sense of humour has become extinct. See you next time. Bye.
On our next show, how did one man save the water supply of an entire village?
And what sticky situation did this man get into underneath his house?